Hey, what's up, fam? Welcome to today's episode of 49 Faithfully. We're your hosts, Miriah Lee and Teran Lewis, and today we're joined by a very special guest, Rohan. How you doing, fellas?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys both for having me on. This is definitely something that I've wanted to do for a while, and now I'm glad that it's coming to fruition.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for coming on. Glad we could finally make it work out.
yeah. First and foremost, thank you as well for being on, man. I know it's kind of been hit and miss with us, and with the Warriors playing and all this other stuff. So I understand. So yeah, I'm doing good. It's a beautiful Saturday. It's not too hot here in Vegas as of yet. So yeah, I'm just gonna enjoy this day, and I took next Friday off of work, so I'm probably gonna do some work after we're finished up here, just so I don't get so behind when I come back. So
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Rohan, why don't you let everybody know in case they don't know what you got going on, where they can find you, all that good stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I write for 49ers Web Zone. A lot of content there. Staying tuned on the 49ers. Both giving my thoughts and just breaking the news on what happens. Like this past weekend from State of the Franchise. I also host my own YouTube channel where I have my podcast 49ers Red Zone with Marco Martinez. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to tune in. And for those of you guys that want to follow me on Twitter, I also do drop content on there at Rohan Chakrav on Twitter. Be sure to hit that and hit me with follow. Thank you guys, though, both of you, for coming me on. And make sure you guys subscribe to the 49er Faithful Lee podcast. You know, they also be dropping content on them Saturdays and Wednesdays. Definitely a blast. And so be sure to subscribe to this channel as well.
Yep, thank you. And I have
Appreciate
the link to his YouTube channel and his Twitter info in the description of the video. So making it easy for you guys. Make sure you guys go over there and subscribe. So before we jump into, 49ers stuff, and we always like to start out with, some stuff that we got going on. Unfortunately, today I have some bad news, but I don't want to touch on it too much because I just can't right now. But I do want to send my love, prayer, support out to one of my really good friends, Leaf. Her daughter was killed on Monday um, in a murder suicide. So I do, want to let you know that you're in my thoughts, my prayers, and my love is with you guys. Um, and, just rest in peace, Des. I know that you're safe now. Um, and yeah.
Hey, Mariah, you got me teary eyed over here, girl.
I mean, you got me too.
Honestly, like I say,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, R.I.P. To your daughter's friend. Like that's tragic. I understand it was a murder suicide, and to me, that's coward behavior. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to suffer consequences, so I'm gonna kill myself as well. I just don't agree with that. And like I said, it was a young girl in her 20s. So I'm sorry, Mariah. I know it's hard. It's hard for me, and I don't even know the girl, and because I have a daughter that's the same age, so that's hurtful. That's hurtful to hear that. So
Yeah, especially when I hear news like that, when it's someone my age, it hits like a lot harder because like a lot of young people, they have their lives ahead of them. They have so much promise, so much growth. So, yeah, my condolences to you and your friend Mariah. That's tragic news. Tragic news.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Um, to move along, I guess we'll, touch on the Warriors since they did put away their title and won the championship this week. My guy Steph finally got his finals MVP, so there's nothing left for the haters to keep, talking about anymore. Um, so congrats to them, congrats to him. With that being done now, I did want to talk about the Bay Area greatness and the legacies of the Bay Area and all that. The most known names like worldwide is Montana and Jerry Rice for all, everything that they've done, all the accomplishments, the records, the championships. Now that Steph has 4 championships and he's not even done yet, like he could get more before he's done. He has the season MVPs, the finals MVP now. He even got to play the new one this season with the playoff MVP or whatever it is. So now that he has all this, where do you guys think that now he ranks in that? Is he now? Do you think that his name is more well known, worldwide than those other ones? Or where do you think that, he stacks up against those Bay Area greats now?
Yeah, so when you talk about the Bay Area greats, right, we obviously we can talk about the Joe Montanas, the Jerry Rices, all of these figureheads in Bay Area sports. But to me, the reason that Steph Curry's name is really, really important is because he's the most recent, right? I think we haven't seen a guy of his caliber, of his play since Barry Bonds, and obviously the whole PED scandal happened with baseball back then. But it's been that long, and so that's why I think there's even more like support and even more hope towards Steph Curry, and why many are painting him now as the figurehead of Bay Area sports of all time. Now, do I think that it is warranted? Obviously, but it's such a tough discussion when it's two different sports, right? Because Montana and that era brought so many Super Bowls to the 49ers. Steph Curry now has 4 rings in the 8 years that he's played. And I'm sure that this will go on as long as Steph Curry continues to play, as long as he continues to add accolades to his name, where he probably ends up being the number one person in Bay Area sports of all time when he retires. But at the moment, I think it is neck and neck, just based purely on accolades. But on impact, I think that like y'all can disagree with this, but I think because Joe Montana was followed by such a great quarterback in Steve Young, the impact in Bay Area sports was maybe taken a little for granted just because that success was continued. But the way that Steph Curry has changed the game with the NBA, I think that impact has been a little more sustained, especially in recent culture.
Yeah, that's some awesome, excellent points there. So for me, it's pretty close, and I usually don't go off of accolades as far as their ring content and stuff, because then you look at somebody like a what's the guy who's on the Warriors that just got his 4th ring, Andre Iguodala. Like he has 4 rings, but I wouldn't put, obviously he's not in that category with the Montanas and the Curry. So to say rings matter, I think it just depends on the caliber of the player. To me, I think Joe Montana still has an edge. And the only reason why I say that is because every time he went to the Super Bowl, he was perfect. Like, he's 4-0, and I understand that Curry has more has more finals appearances. But to me, that it speaks more volumes when you go into a Super Bowl 4 different times and then you win every single time. You never threw an interception. So he never put the game in jeopardy being the 49ers quarterback. So
Yeah.
to me, he still has the edge as far as the Bay Area great. However, Steph Curry, like you said, he's not done. Four championships in 8 years is a dynasty. You know what I'm saying? That's a dynasty because you won 50% of the time. So if Steph Curry goes out and he wins another one, there is definitely an argument for me as far as can Steph Curry surpass Joe Montana as the Bay Area great as far as the greatest sports athlete ever. So, and the Warriors aren't done. Like even if they say they lose a Klay Thompson or a Wiggins, they still got Moses Moody in the waiting, Jonathan Kuminga. We don't know what Wiseman is, so that team is not going anywhere. You know what I mean? So, yeah, this is going to be interesting. Right now it's 1A and 1B, but I still have Joe Montana a little bit of edge over Steph Curry. So,
yeah. To me, like at this point, and you kind of touched on this about like the time gap. Like I think it's since Joe Montana was so long ago, that the most like the young kids and younger people growing up these days, they're not as familiar with Joe Montana. Like Curry's name's out there and current, and he's doing things to the game right now as we speak. So I think at this point, like I think even before this championship right now, but I think that Curry's name is more well known, like worldwide. Like, people are wearing Curry jerseys in China and Japan and everywhere, like Curry's, like he's a brand like worldwide. So like I would probably take Curry on it. But yeah, I think, obviously argument can be made for all of them.
yeah, that's funny that Rohan brought up the Steve Young thing because me being in my 40s, I talked to a lot of different people in their 20s, 30s, 40s,
Yeah.
50s, whatever the case may be. So I'm kind of like middle aged, I guess you can say. Whereas like a lot of people in their late 30s or early 40s will sit there and say, "No, Joe Montana is my favorite quarterback for the Niners." But yet a lot of people from like the mid 30s on down will sit there and say, "No, Steve Young was my
Yeah.
guy." You know what I mean? So because they didn't get the chance to really opportunity to see Joe Montana when they did, he was kind of like on a down spiral where it was like, oh, he wasn't as as good as he was, and they saw Steve Young come in. So, yeah, it's just an argument. A lot of takes can be recency bias.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
I look at it as a whole. I'm not one of those like, well, nah, you'll never surpass Joe Montana. There is a possibility he can, in my eyes. You know what I mean? So I don't ever say he'll never be able to do this type thing, because Steph Curry has done his time. I mean, he's overcome ankle injuries to start of his career, and he's turned it around, and he's been an absolute beast. And like I said,
Yeah.
if he wins another one next year, the next 2 years, you have to argue that he's possibly better just in the Bay Area, not overall. We're just talking about Bay Area sports. So yeah.
Yep. So we touched on Tart on our last episode about him saying that, oh, maybe I'm waiting till it gets closer to camp to sign. So he must have already known that he was signed somewhere. That's why he was, out talking. We've seen that he did sign with the Philadelphia Eagles. So, there's no chance of him returning to the 49ers, even though, we didn't think that was going to happen anyway. So, I just want to say good luck to him. Hope he does well over there. That is my family's from Philly. So that's all of my family's team is the Eagles. So I'll still be seeing him play a lot over there. Hopefully he don't drop no interceptions for them. What are your guys' thoughts? You have any thoughts on him going over there?
Yeah,
because that wasn't somewhere where I thought, like, I was not expecting, like him to sign there out of all places.
Especially that quick. When did we have our show? Tuesday or Wednesday last week, or this week? What day was that?
I think
Was it
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
I don't know.
Yeah, so Tuesday we're sitting here like, yeah, I mean, who knows when he's going to get a job? It could be, start a training camp, preseason, whatever the case may be, and like 3 days later, he gets a job. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I never have anything bad to say about Tart. He did give it his all when he was on the football field. Again, he was one of the person who was always injured. I expect a little bit more from him as far as playmaking ability, because with 4 interceptions in 7 years, that's nothing to brag about. You know what I mean? So I just hope that, I wish him the best. I hope he goes out there and balls on his 1-year deal, and maybe he can get like a nice contract, because he's going to be on the wrong side, or he could be on the wrong side of 30. I don't know his age right now. Maybe he's 29 or something, but hopefully
30. Yeah.
He's 30. Yeah. So maybe he can get one more decent contract where it's like a 2-3 year extension somewhere. So yeah, I mean, I'm proud of him. It sucks that he had to leave on the way he did, because everybody just going to remember him as the person who dropped the interception in the NFC Championship game, which, to me, I don't care what nobody says, that was not the end all be all of the game.
No,
you know what I mean? Like, I want to say there was like 8 minutes left, and people say, well, it changed the flow of the game, which it probably could have, but I can't blame a dropped interception saying that's going to be the end of the game when there's that much time left on the clock. 8 minutes is a lot of time. So yeah. All right, go ahead, Rohan.
Yeah, so I mean, when we talk about Tart and his going to the Eagles, I honestly don't think this impacted the 49ers that much. I think it's been pretty clear the 49ers were planning to move on. And really, when we talk about that play, I don't view it as really indicative of Tart's performance as a 49er, but it's essentially like a scapegoat play as a reason to justify moving on from him. And so as soon as we signed George Odom back in March or whenever it was, I think that was a clear sign that the 49ers were going elsewhere at safety. And I think it makes sense for some reasons. I actually was of the belief that Tart should be brought back. I thought that he'd be a valuable piece in the secondary for another year, especially because our goal right now is to chase for a championship to try and get that 6th Lombardi. So when we talk about Tart, though, like we TL said, right? He's on the wrong side of 30 right now. He just turned 30 this past year. He's on the wrong side of it. And going into his age 31 season, in a time where the 49ers are trying to get younger, right? When we look at the offseason moves that the 49ers made, Charvarius Ward, even George Odom was the oldest free agent we signed that wasn't on our team previously, and he's only 28 years old. Everybody else is on that youth path, and that kind of symbolizes what the 49ers are trying to do right now. We've got Trey Lance at quarterback. He's a 22-year-old guy, and we want to really keep a core on this team for years to come. That's why we didn't sign many 1-year deals this offseason, right? When you look at the deals, Ward 3-year deal, Odom 3-year deal, Oren Burks 2-year deal, Ray McLeod 2-year deal. It's all multi-year deals because the 49ers are beginning to realize that they're a good team and that they got to keep that core together if they want to sustain success. And the way that they've been doing it over the last 2 years is 1 year deal after 1 year deal after 1 year deal. And it was okay because it was the COVID era, right? And everybody wanted to come back to try and get money on the next year, which happened this season. K1 Williams got a deal elsewhere. DJ Jones got a deal elsewhere. Laken Tomlinson got a deal elsewhere. And now Tark got a deal elsewhere. So now I think it's just a transition into the new era, trying to go underlands and trying to sustain a amount of success going forward. But Tart, he's a good player. I think he's a good scheme fit over there in Philly as well. He'll work well in that secondary that is now much improved. Alongside Darius Slay, they signed James Bradbury. So I think that's a pretty good core over there in Philly. So I wish him, like you said, nothing but the best of luck over there.
Yeah, talking about, safeties and who's going to take his place, how confident, what are your feelings about Huff? Do you think that he's, that him and Jimmy, because Jimmy Ward, like we've heard up until this point, like him feeling, or at least voicing that he's pretty confident in the two of them, saying that they could possibly be the best safety duo in the league. And he never talked that way with Tart, which was supposed to be his guy, So what are your thoughts? How do you feel about Hufanga taken over there?
I mean, when you hear words like that, right, it's essentially a vote of confidence. And I think that that's important because as a rookie, especially in Hufanga's place, right, 49ers, we always talk about the athleticism that they like in the secondary, which Hufanga didn't necessarily possess, right? He didn't have a great the reason that he fell to the 6th round of the draft is because he didn't have a great combine. But what Hufanga lacks in that era, he at least makes up for with his instinctual ability, for his range, for his ability to make tackles in open space and things like that. And I think that really for that, the main thing is processing. And I think it takes an extra year in the NFL to process that way. And I think going into a second year, that processing ability has at least been visual to the 49ers coaching staff and to Jimmy Ward. He dubbed him and Hufanga as the best safety duo in the NFL. And I think that kind of shows where the 49ers are going at the position, right? For Jimmy Ward to specifically mention one guy out of the group. A lot of people thought that George Odom could be the starting safety at some point, myself included at some point this season, based on the amount of money that he got. But when you hear what Brian Schneider, our special teams guy, had to say about George Odom, specifically on his ability to play special teams, it kind of seems like that's the role that George Odom is going to play for this team in years for years to come. And so, or at least for 2022. So I'm pretty confident right now in Talanoa Hufanga, especially the last point that I'll make is especially because of the scheme that I expect us to play. Kyle Shanahan talked about it during State of the Franchise. He wants guys that can cover, straight up cover man. You're going to see a lot of cover one man this year because he wanted that last year as well when Jason Verrett was out on the field. But obviously, once he went down with the injury, you have to change your scheme to better accommodate the cornerbacks that you had on your roster. But now you have Ward, you have Mosley on the other end, both who can cover one-on-one against receivers. So you can see a lot of cover one man where you have one safety in the box, where you have your overhang guy in Jimmy Ward. And when you want Jimmy Ward to play in the box, given his versatility, you can have other guys move in. Dante Johnson has proven that he's capable of playing back there. You can have one of the cornerbacks move back out there, maybe even a Tariq Castro Fields from this past draft. Or you can have George Odom play there if you're confident in his coverage ability. So I think that there's a ton of possibilities given the versatility of this team. And I think the current scheme best fits for Hufanga and for Jimmy Ward to play as the safeties.
Yeah, some excellent points. I don't know what else I can say to that, Rohan. No, you're absolutely right, man. And the thing about Hufanga, he has. So I played organized football from the age of 8 all the way up to junior college down in San Diego. And the one thing that you can teach is speed. You can get a strength and conditioning coach and teach speed. So just for example, my junior year, I ran a 4.7 40, right? Over the off season, we trained stuff like that. My 40 went from a 4.7 to a 4.62 in one off season. And that's huge. Like that's 0.8 seconds off of a 40. So with Hufanga, he has all the intangibles that you really can't teach. He has the intangibles, the IQ, all this other stuff. Like you said, the reason why he fails because of his bad combine. He ran like a 4.65 or whatever the case may be. Like he was slow, but something that hopefully he can work on and stuff like that. Like he takes great angles. So I have no worries about Hufanga. I just worry about him maybe getting beat deep in coverage, whatever the case may be. But hopefully that's something he can learn on from being physical, kind of like a Richard Sherman. Like Richard Sherman knew he didn't have his speed wasn't the best, so he he always use his hand and his technique to get him over the hump. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm really not worried too much about Hufanga. The fact that he's getting, and like you said, like I was kind of worried about the safety position because I was like, man, like, his coverage might be an issue. But at the same time, like, we kept doing these mocks of like, Nick Cross being coming to us and all this other stuff. And then when we didn't go safety at all, I'm like, okay, well, they must see something that obviously that we don't. So obviously I'm gonna be comfortable with it. So yeah, I have no issue with Hufanga. And to go back to what I was saying about the speed thing, like, I don't know, you're pretty young, Rohan, but there was a guy we drafted from another Trojan back, I want to say it was 2004. His name was Taylor Mays. 6'4", 225, ran like a 4.27 40, had all the intangibles as far as look as you want. He out of the league in a couple of years because he took bad angles, like his IQ wasn't the best. So speed isn't always everything. I think once you learn technique and stuff, technique will keep you in the game longer than speed, if that makes sense. Because I remember watching a video for Torrey Holt when my nephew was playing wide receiver, and he sat there and told the receivers, like, look, route running and technique will keep you in the league more than speed. He was like, I always will make sure that I ran my routes really crisp and made sure I knew the playbook, because that right there will keep in the league longer, which shows you that a lot of slow receivers do have jobs in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? So yes, that's one of the things I'm worried about. So yeah, I'm glad that Jimmy Ward kind of vouched for him and said, like, look, we're going to be the best duo in the league, and I have high hopes for him. So hopefully the stuff that he doesn't have, that he can clean that up and take it on moving forward. So
yeah, and real quick on that point, the speed point, I just want to bring up an example from this past draft. Kyle Hamilton was ranked the number 1 safety in the class, drafted number 14 overall, and he was seen as a guy who a lot of teams liked, and he didn't possess straight line speed. I think he ran a 4.5 or maybe a 4.6 at the 40-yard dash. But the thing is, it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily need that like game-changing speed at safety. You need to be able to have a pretty good range. You need to be able to get to the ball, and you need to be, the number one thing, like you said, is being able to take the angles properly, because what good is speed if you just take the wrong angle every time? And the 49ers have had a safety, like you said, like Taylor Mays. I think Tavares Moore has even been in that conversation before, of just taking the wrong angles so that speed isn't best utilized. So if you have the right angles, I think that's where Hufanga will excel. And in a shorter distance, especially playing in the box, I think that better suits his strengths.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yep, me too. I've been a Huff fan, but all we ever heard last season when he would play, like, from the guys that know better, he's too slow. He all the reasons why he couldn't take over for Tart, why he wasn't going to be a good option to fill in that spot. So I don't know. I've always liked him. I like him as a person. I think he has the right mindset. He has what it takes on that side of it. So that's why I've always liked him. And I don't know, I was kind of sick of Tart, to be honest.
Yeah. And to be honest too, like there's track speed and then there's game speed.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Like, so him having that 4.65 or whatever it was combine, like people, they sneezed about that. But I never forget a comment by Deion Sanders. He said Jerry Rice might have ran a 4.6 at the combine, but when he gets the ball in his hands, he's a 4.2.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you guys are entering the drawing or the number pick, whatever it's called, I don't know. Get your numbers in, because I'm tired of waiting for y'all. I'm picking it right now. Before I do that, we'll go ahead and start talking about, we had these the year 2 quarterback rankings, from the executives or whoever wants to put their name on it. It's probably just one person that says they're all these people, but so they did a ranking of the year 2 quarterbacks, and for those that haven't seen it, they had Trevor Lawrence 1, Mac Jones 2, Zach Wilson 3, Justin Fields 4, Trey Lance 5, and Mills 6th. I'll let you guys go ahead and give your thoughts before I get started on these people. How do you guys feel? Now, to me, like, obviously Trey hasn't played as much as the other guys. So, like, are we, like, I'm ranking, like, who's going to have the better season in their second year, right? That's like what I'm looking at the list thinking. So
Okay. I don't
I
know
don't know.
how. I don't know what criteria they were looking. Like you said, I don't know if there is what they're think if they're thinking that's what it's going to be, or their perception of like these are how they're going to be. I don't know. Like it's hard. It's hard to determine where they're coming from. But if they're going off, let's just say they're going off of last year. I don't know how Davis Mills can be that low. Like he played great last year, so I'm just like, why was he so low? But yeah, to have Zach Wilson over Trey Lance to me is mind blowing. Like Trevor Lawrence, he's even though he had a bad season, but I look at his team. I truly believe if him and Mac Jones were switched, it probably would have been a different story. Like Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback than Mac Jones. Like let's just call it like we see it. But at the same time, like you said, Murray, I don't know if they're going off of like, well, in 2022, this is how I think they're going to be. But Trey Lance being fifth, I think that's not fair at all. Like he's in the best situation. Yeah, he only played 10 quarters or whatever the case may be, but in those 10 quarters, he played very well. And then he ended the season with like six total touchdowns and 2 interceptions. So I don't see what they're saying, but to each their own. I'm kind of glad that Trey Lance. I mean, I hate it and love it at the same time. I hate that they keep disrespecting him and saying he ain't it and all this other nonsense. But at the same time, he's so level headed that I like the fact that he's not letting it get to him. That he said only thing that matters is this locker room and the coaching staff. So I'm glad that he has that strong mindset and he's not soft about it. So keep disrespecting Trey, keep putting him low on the list. I love it because you're just adding fuel to the fire, in my opinion. And if he's anything like me, I love that kind of stuff. I love people doubting me. I love people saying you can't do this, you can't do that, because I'm going to prove you wrong. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I hate these lists. It's been 1 year. We really don't know how these quarterbacks will, like every single quarterback on this list has some sort of, it's not concern, but some sort of reason as to why they performed the way they performed, right? You talk about Trevor Lawrence, he had a pretty poor offensive line and a pretty poor receiving staff. You talk about Mac Jones, he was in a run first offense that really didn't require him to throw the ball as much, but he still flourished pretty well. You talk about Zach Wilson, again, offensive line, injuries, and all that. Justin Fields got sacked 9 times in a game. And then Davis Mills was the best of the bunch, at least up there with Mac Jones. The first observation I saw is, yeah, just like TL, how the heck is Davis Mills at number 6? I don't understand how multiple quarterback analysts or whatever they call themselves continue to put Davis Mills at the lowest. And this is based. I read the article and it was based on 2022 expectations, not a career arc. And if that's the case, if it's a career arc, sure, you can maybe justify putting Davis Mills at 6. But if it's based on 2022, just look at what Davis Mills did last year. He had a pretty solid season with a pretty poor offensive line and one of the worst receiving cores in the entirety of football last year. So to me, I think Davis Mills should be at number 3 behind whoever might be at the top 2. At least he should be in the top 3. But as for Lance's ranking, at the moment, I don't really care. Like Miriah said, we haven't seen Lance in an 18-game season. We can't really justify ranking him at a certain spot. We obviously we say a lot that he's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that the season will at least prove that. But at the moment, we can't necessarily rank Trey Lance anywhere. That's why I don't think it's justifiable to rank rookie quarterbacks, especially those who haven't played in a significant amount of games like Trey Lance has. Right? You can't really rank someone how he's going to perform in an 18-game season based on 2 games. But Trey Lance, I mean, like you said, right now he's the underdog. He's the guy with the most pressure on him. He's the guy with a ton of expectations because he's leading a team that is playoff caliber, and he's got to make, like, his job is to make sure that this team reaches the playoffs, just like Jimmy Garoppolo has in the past. And so I think that the expectations are high, but everything that we've seen from Trey Lance, especially as a person, shows that he's capable of handling those expectations. And so I'm excited to see what he can do. Really, what I want to see from Trey Lance, can he just produce what Jimmy Garoppolo produced? Because if that's the case, then we're going back to the spots that we've been in the past. Jimmy Garoppolo threw for, I think it was 3,810 yards this year, 20 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. If Trey Lance can just produce those numbers, I think the 49ers are in a good shape, especially because I think their roster right now seems a little better than they were last year.
Yeah, I agree, Rohan and John V. I get what you're saying about Mills went quite high. However, out of all those 6 quarterbacks, he's the only one that didn't go in the first round. he was a third round quarterback. So I think that's why, they're putting him in that tier. But at the same time, I agree with Rohan. He should at least be third. Like if you want to say Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, and Davis Mills, and then Trey Lance, like I'd be okay with that because of the unknown with Trey. But to put players in the likes of Justin Fields or whoever, Justin Fields and Zach Wilson ahead of him, I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being brutally honest, Justin Fields and Zach Wilson had historically terrible rookie seasons. Like, that's just how it was, right? Fields threw for under 2,000 yards. He had an under 60% completion percentage, and he had more interceptions than touchdowns with a pretty low yards per average. Same with Wilson. I think Wilson was a little worse than Fields on a larger sample size, 55% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. So really, I don't know where you can justify putting them two above Davis Mills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Zach, like you guys are saying, I mean, even the eye test, Zach Wilson played like shit. Fields played like shit. Like, I don't know, people are continuously making excuses for Trevor Lawrence. Like, I mean, Bills had a worse team all around than what Trevor Lawrence had. Trevor Lawrence had talent there just because his coaches, didn't want to use them or, whatever they had going on there. That's another story. But I still don't think Trevor Lawrence even looked good with what he had. Like, I'm not a Trevor Lawrence fan. I would not have drafted him number 1 overall. And I would not have him number 1 on my list either.
Fair.
And then Mac, I mean, that is what it is. I think he's always going to do okay because he's in a okay situation, I don't think he's a great quarterback, but he's in a good situation for him. So, I think he's always going to, I think he'll probably finish maybe number 3 on that list. If I'm thinking, how will the quarterbacks, how will their season go, this year? Who will have the best season? And, that's something, we talked about before is that, going into the draft before we knew, who would land in San Francisco, everybody always was saying, oh, well, whoever goes there is going into the best situation. Whoever's going to San Francisco, they're already a winning team. They're going to the best situation. Well, now that it's Trey Lance there, people seem to forget that he was going into that best situation.
Yeah.
Now it's just, oh, Trey Lance has no experience and he's this and he's that, well, he's still in the best situation. So let's not forget about that. That hasn't changed. He still has the best team around him than any of those other quarterbacks on that list. So, you can call it a homer, but, I've been on the Trey Lance train from day one. So I'm putting Trey Lance number 1 on my list. Thank you very much. And then I'll probably I think Mac, I'm guessing he's going to have a better season than Mills. So I probably would put Trey Lance, Mac, Mills,
Lawrence.
Yeah, Lawrence, and then Zach Wilson and Fields like tied for last place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing too, Miriah, like I want to see how interesting it's going to be with Mac Jones because he lost Josh McDaniels as offensive coordinator. Like how is that going to help or hinder his success? So we're going to see. I mean, I never doubt the Patriots. Like they, Bill Belichick is kind of like him and Mike Tomlin. No matter what situation happens, they seem to get it done.
Yeah,
like they're just two coaches that no matter what's going on, that they're like, okay, we're going to have a winning season. So Mac Jones, like I said, he lost his OC and Josh McDaniels, and he was the man there calling plays. So we'll see how that's going to happen with Mac Jones.
Yeah. 49er Minded won the giveaway, so let me pull his card real quick.
Do you have anything else to touch on that, Rohan?
No, I think we covered all the points. I mean, I think at least, like, if we're basing it off situation, last year when we were talking about the draft, I think I said, regardless of who gets drafted at 3, if it's Jones, if it's Fields, if it's Wilson, I think that, or obviously Lance, I thought whoever was drafted at 3 was going to be the best quarterback in the bunch just because they're going into the best situation, right? And right now, if we're talking about situation, the 49ers are the one team, the only team out of the bunch that are a playoff caliber team, apart from obviously the Patriots, who are on the fringe of making the playoffs right now. Those two teams have the best situations. So ultimately, those two quarterbacks should perform the best. If you talk about situations, I think Justin Fields has to be number 6 on this list just based on the Chicago Bears somehow, despite being a rebuilding team, got worse this year. They lost their number 1 receiver. They lost their number 1, top 2 defenders in Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks. I think they're both gone. And Robert Quinn might be on his way out as well. what that contract dispute. So I think that there's like a ton of issues with that situation there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. It's a signed Jason Verrett card.
Oh, nice. Nice. Was it him at the combine?
Yep. hmm So congrats to you, 49er minded. We
Jay
appreciate
Fever.
it. Yep. He's gonna be like a Iggy. I'm picturing to have like an Iggy role this year where he's like the coach on the bench, like an Iggy Dalla role where he don't help much, but he just coaches the players. I'll
Even
be
if he's
good at that.
healthy, you think that?
Well, I'm not expecting that he's
Oh,
going to
okay.
be too healthy. So, I mean, he might be healthy, but I'm not expecting that we're going to see Jason Verrett from prior to
From
injury.
from
Yeah.
2020 season, yeah. Hey Rohan, just to let you know too, you were asking before the show how me and Miriah kind of connected and stuff. After we got closer and stuff, me and her found out that like a month or so before the draft, we had picked Trey Lance to become the quarterback. Like we live in Vegas, obviously, so we went. Well, I think she does hers on her phone, but I went to the sports book and I bet that Trey Lance would be the third pick after that trade. So me and her been all in on Trey Lance even before the draft. So
That's dope.
yeah.
So, and you're welcome, Besh. I appreciate you. I just want to kind of touch on what obviously me and TL have touched on our thoughts about it, but I wanted to get your thoughts on how you feel about the team coming out of mini camp and, from everything that we've heard, maybe, touch on a couple of things that you were most excited about and, what you're looking forward to, what the players, obviously we're looking forward to the players putting in the work between mini camp and training camp, right? Like this is an important time, especially for Trey Lance, to get in there and really, focus on what they need to focus on to get ready for the season. So what are you looking forward to, like going into training camp?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of storylines with minicamp and training camp, right? When we talk about the OTA period, I mean, first of all, the amount of injuries that we've seen and the amount of like who's starting where, right?
Yeah.
One of the guys that we mentioned was Hufanga. We see that Hufanga is now, at least right now, he's positioned to be the starting safety opposite of Jimmy Ward. The Trey Lance news has been fairly optimistic going into training camp, which is good. We've obviously known about the work ethic and all the personality and behind that. But really, it's been pretty good reports going into training camp. It's really about those training camp battles for certain positions. At wide receiver, there's an open spot. That sixth spot at wide receiver. At cornerback, I think that sixth spot at cornerback is still pretty open. Who's going to make this out of the safety rotation? Who's going to make it? Because we've got to add Dante Johnson now to the safety mix because he's been playing free safety the entire time during this past training or this past mini camp and OTA period. He's actually been lining up at safety, and so there are a ton of these questions. But really, my biggest question is the offensive line. How does it end up how does it end up compiling out? I think that Jake Brendel is going to at least get the biggest opportunity to start at center. I've been on that train for a little bit after recognizing the rapport with Lance and all the really the factors going in his way. Right, he has the rapport with Lance, having played with him last year. Because while Jimmy Garoppolo played with Alex Mack last year, Brendel and Lance were on the second team for the entirety of the offseason last year, and then obviously on the scout team, and then now on the they're playing together as the first team center and first team quarterback. So I think that rapport is there. The offensive line coach, Chris Forster, he actually lobbied to sign Jake Brendel. And then after the COVID year in which he opted out, the 49ers, this is a backup lineman. And the 49ers still went out. They reached out and they got Jake Brendel on a one-year deal last year. And so I think that that's important. But really, all the signs right now point to Brendel. His athleticism matches exactly what the 49ers want. And he also calls the protections, which is important. Just like Alex Mack did last year, I think Brendel covers a ton of the responsibilities on the offensive line, which is needed. And it really alleviates some of the pressure from Trey Lance, who, while he did it in college, it's obviously adding more, especially in an NFL capacity. And so I think that that's important as well. Brendel just has the archetype of what the 49ers want at center. And I don't think he's the future option. He's 29 years old, but he's a good bridge option to Nick Zakelj, who I think can take over next year after a year of seasoning in a way under Brendel and under this offense going into 2023 and being the center of the future. That's kind of the thought on center. But at right guard, Brunskill right now has knee tendonitis. He should be back by training camp. But Jalen Moore has been taking all the first team reps. I think who starts day one of training camp will be pretty indicative of where the 49ers currently are going at the position. If it's Brunskill, I think that shows a lack of confidence towards Moore because he's been given the entire offseason to work at right guard. But if they slot in Brunskill right there, I don't think that they're that confident in Moore. But if it's Moore, then that's going to be a pretty good battle. And it could even lead to Brunskill not being on the team, although I think he ends up being on it despite his $2.4 million salary. Oh, the question here, concerns about Banks and McGlinchey. I think it's more McGlinchey than Banks. I'm not really, to be honest, I'm not that concerned about Aaron Banks. He could have started last year had the 49ers gone on a losing streak. I think Kyle Shanahan mentioned that. And he's playing alongside the best left tackle in the NFL right now. I think that helps you. That helps you out, just like it helped out Laken Tomlinson ascend to that Pro Bowl level type of left guard that he's been that he was last year. So I think that Aaron Banks, at least the concerns are a little less. He's gotten his body right. I think he's going to be a little more agile, which will help in the run game. And I think that everything kind of works out for Aaron Banks, especially after a year of learning the 49ers offense. McGlinchey, though, right now, we don't know. We don't know how his recovery is going. If he's there by training camp, I think that that's a great sign. But if Justin Skule is starting day one of training camp, and if McGlinchey is still out for a little bit, you have to wonder, is Justin Skule going to be that day one starter come week one while they let McGlinchey work? And when McGlinchey comes back, will he be the same form of McGlinchey that he was in the past? And that the 49ers really need that, especially at that tackle position.
Yeah, I'm definitely more worried about Mike than Banks as well. I think Banks, like you said, will do great there. He's, next to the best. So, and, that's what people tend to forget, that Laken's play got better, with Trent next to him. So I'm sure, it takes a lot of pressure off the person playing next to him when he can pretty much hold the whole D line by himself,
Yeah,
like that guy is just a massive human.
He's huge. Yeah. I'm with Rohan too. I have more concerns about McGlinchey than I do with Banks. I mean, Banks is going into his natural position. He looks good too. Like he looks so fit. Somebody just said it too. Yeah, he looks so fit. Like he's dropped some weight. He's turned some of that fat into muscle. Like he looks good. So I have no worries about him. He's, like you said, he's playing next to the best left tackle in football. I think the right side of that line is my main concern.
Yeah.
But Jalen, but we have competition, which is good because I see you kept mentioning Justin Skule. I've heard nothing but great things this whole OTAs and mini camp. Like he's been good, he's been taking the first team reps at right tackle. So yeah, we have him. We still got Colton McKivitz. You know what I mean? So we have some depth there, and then we got the two guys that we just brought in, the Spencer Burford and Nick Sakelj or whatever his name is. So yeah, we got talent there. Just best man wins. And like you said, I think if Brunskill's healthy, I definitely think he'll get the start just because Kyle trusts him. You know what I mean? He'll trust him to go in there and do his thing. But Jalen Moore is not just going to lay down and be like, here's your, you can go ahead and have this position. I think he's going to make it tough for Kyle, that's what you want. You want your coach to have tough decisions, making that 53-man roster and putting that starting positions together. So if that's what they do, if they give Kyle headaches of, man, who am I going to start? That's what I'm here for. So I have one more thing to mention about that state of the franchise, because something that Kyle said about Trey Lance kind of hit home for me, because I had a baseball coach kind of tell me the same thing. So when he said that Trey has a lot more horsepower than what he even think he realizes, I think he has it. He thinks deep down, like, man, Trey has so much speed and athleticism that once he puts it all together, he's going to be a problem. You know what I'm saying? I think that's why he said that, because he's still young. I don't think he really knows his strengths yet. Like we know he can throw the ball hard, stuff like that. But once he gets it and puts it together, it's going to happen. Because I remember when I played baseball in junior high, I was like, the way I was swinging the bat, I wasn't giving it my all. Like I was kind of timid with it, because I was so scared to strike out and stuff like that. So my coach was just like, man, you have so much strength that you don't even realize you have. Like you need to untap your potential. And once he said that, it stuck with me. Like, what is he talking about? You know what I mean? And then so I started like working on stuff. And then when I realized what he was talking about, like, man, like stop being scared, stop being timid, just give it your all. Like you can't play scared. And once I realized, and I'm not saying he's saying that about Trey. That's just what he meant for me. Like, stop playing like timid. Once he realized that, like, my batting average took off, my home runs took off, stuff like that. So I think once Trey realizes his untapped potential, he's going to be a serious problem in this league, a la like a Josh Allen, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, no argument here. No argument here.
Yeah. Throwback brought up that, Shanahan also said in the state of the franchise that the O-line has a chance to be even better than it was last year. And, like something about, just because it's not, big names or no names to us don't mean that they don't have guys there that they believe can get the job done, And I think that's why we've seen them let Lakin go. Like, they're not going to let just Lakin walk out the door if they don't think that they have somebody to take his spot, like. That's what we have to keep in mind. Like, this isn't just some scrub team. Like, this is a team ready to win. This is a winning team. Like, why are they going to let winners go out the door if they don't have winners to replace them? You know what I'm saying? Like I think we just need to trust in them a little bit. Like, they're not going to just put scrubs out there for us.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Go ahead,
But when we talk about the offensive line, well, the 49ers have sometimes struggled to develop offensive linemen into some of these superstar offensive linemen. I think one thing that we have to know is the 49ers, they've made some of these average or below average offensive linemen look good at times, right? You saw Tom Compton excel in the run at times last year. You've seen guys like Daniel Brunskill appear out of nowhere. I mean, Lakin Tomlinson wasn't really anything special before he got traded to the 49ers. So they've had a couple of these success stories with unknown players. And I think that can continue with certain players going forward as long as, because the same coaching staff is there, right? Chris Forster, he's the mastermind behind it all. He's remained a 49er. And Kyle Shanahan even said that he was the one guy that he wanted to keep this year just because of the relationship between Forster and the offensive lineman and how it takes some time to nurture them.
Yeah, you're right. You kind of just said what I was going to say about, having these guys that we don't even know about. Like, we all got scared. Tom Compton played well last year. Like, at one point, he was right behind Trent in offensive line ratings and stuff. So I'm like, man. So, yeah, I just think too, people were saying it on Spaces back in November, December. I think you might have been one of them, Rohan, where we're like, we kept saying, I want Lakin Tomlinson back. But at the same time, a lot of us were like, I think his replacement's here. I think that's why they drafted Aaron Banks so high, because they don't think they're going to be able to have the chance to sign Lakin Tomlinson. So you're absolutely right, man. I think the replacement was always in the building. So.
Yeah. Yeah, throwback. We touched on the whole state of the franchise last episode, so we're not going to go into too deep into that today. But before we let you go ahead and get out of here, you had written an article recently talking about did the 49ers want Cam Taylor-Britt over Drake Jackson at 61? And for those who don't know, Cam Taylor-Britt's quarterback, he was a cornerback. He was drafted by the Bengals at 60. You want to talk to us a little bit about that article and your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I mean, it was just basically off what John Lynch said during State of the Franchise, right? It was compiling a couple of the quotes, and essentially the quote was, John Lynch was talking about the 49ers draft strategy, which it was a little different this year in that the 49ers didn't trade up or down at all. They stayed pat at every one of their 9 selections and actually made 9 selections. And he said, we stayed pat because there were players that we liked at every pick. That's a cool thing when a plan comes together. There were some fun moments in the draft, some not so fun, like a player we really wanted and someone jumped us. But that happens in every draft. And when you go back and look, the 49ers weren't necessarily jumped in the early rounds, apart from the one time where they were jumped in. The notable one was at pick 60, where the Bengals traded up about 10 spots to select Cam Taylor-Britt, a safety/cornerback out of Nebraska. And when you talk about it, Cam Taylor-Britt, right? Now looking at the 49ers defense, 49ers had a hole at safety, and they also had a hole in the slot at the time. And a lot of people thought that they were going to draft one of those two positions pretty early. Cam Taylor-Britt would have fit that with his versatility. And I think he was a player the 49ers were high on pretty much. That's why the Bengals traded up to get him. And it was interesting to see Shanahan and Lynch say that about or at least Lynch say that quote. And I don't think that it's any slight at all towards Drake Jackson. I think the 49ers were ecstatic that they got Drake Jackson. But when you look at their philosophy in recent years, they've always drafted need over best player available in the early rounds. We talk about Mike McGlinchey over one of those safeties, one of the elite safeties in that 2018 draft, right? And even in 2019, receiver and defensive end were the two biggest needs on the team. And they selected those two positions in that round. In 2020, after trading away DeForest Buckner, instead of taking one of the receivers like a CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy, or even Tristan Wirfs, a top-tier offensive tackle, they went ahead and selected Javon Kinlaw because they had a defensive tackle need. And then fast forward to 2021, Aaron Banks was selected in the second round, a guy who they believed they needed to solidify the offensive line of the future, especially with Laken Tomlinson's impending free agency. So that's something that they've done. And this year they didn't necessarily do that. I'm glad they shied away from it because they draft really, really well when they go best player available. You've seen it in the later rounds, in the third to fifth round especially. You've seen how they've drafted and how they've flourished. And that's what they did this year. But it seems like if Taylor Britt was there at 60 or 61, they probably would have taken him over Drake Jackson, which would have been an interesting selection. But speaking on the Drake Jackson part, I think they also said how like they kind of have a philosophy, and we've continued to add to their defensive line because that's kind of like the basis of their philosophy. So they're ecstatic about Jackson. I mean, we've heard all the players and all the coaches talk about Drake Jackson and what he brings and the unique God-given talent that he has, especially with that bend. So I think that they're excited about that pick, but also it was an interesting quote for sure.
Yeah, some good points, man. And the way you broke it down, I totally agree because, like you said, we've always pretty much just drafted for need and stuff like that. But and me, I was in the mindset, and that's why I'm not a scout or a GM, but I was in the mindset of like defensive end edge can wait till round 4 because I was looking at our at our draft picks at 61, 93, and then it was 104 or whatever the case may be where it took
Yeah,
Danny Gray. I was thinking offensive line, safety and offensive line, safety, and wide receiver in our first 3 picks.
yeah,
And then so I was just like, because of the fact that we went and re-signed Jordan Willis, we got Kerry Hyder back, we got Kamoko Turway, Samson Ebelcom. So I'm like, why would they? So to me, I was just like, why would they go edge this early when I don't think any edge at 61 can beat out any of these guys because they have that edge going into either being in the defense the second year or the second time around like Hyder, and then with Turway just having that veteran presence. You know what I'm saying? So to me, I was just like, there's no way they're taking an edge at 61 because we're so loaded there. You know what I mean? And the fact that they were like, well, I don't care. He's the best player on our board right now. And he's a need that he's a person that we like, and you can never have too many edge rushers. So when they took him, I was kind of shocked. But like you said, it was more of like, well, even though we needed a corner, and I agree, it might have been the fact that, that Britt might have been that pick because I was like, okay, because they still drafted 2 corners. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that they possibly could have said that, and I caught that too when John Lynch said, yeah, there was a round where we were jumped and took the player that we were going to take. So that makes sense to me. So yeah, so I mean, like I said, I have no knock against Drake Jackson. I think he's going to be great, but it was a kind of a surprise to me he was taken because I didn't feel like it was a huge need at the time with all the defensive ends that they had brought back. You know what I mean?
yeah. But overall, with the roster, how it's compiled, I'm pretty excited in the way that it went because I think Womack at least has flashed in the early stage of training camp or mini camp, and he seems like he's primed for the slot position at the moment, right? I know Darquise Bernard has started out there, but it seems like he's there, and Jackson just adds. And while a lot of people thought that they would have gone edge later, especially after that Teray signing that happened really quick, really close to the draft, Jackson provides you with a long-term guy alongside Nick Bosa, of course. And the 49ers, since they recycle and since they use so many defensive linemen, it's also valuable. But you have now those 2 cornerstones, and as opposed to 2019 when you had those 2 cornerstones in Ford and Bosa, rather than trying to use them as much as possible, now the 49ers have the chance where they got the cornerstones, but they've also got so much depth in that they can not worry as much about the injury concerns because they're getting in players a ton.
Yeah, before we go out of here, one more thing on Drake I wanted to talk to you about. We had to hit on this last episode and you brought up, about the players and the coaches and everything, talking so highly about him. There's a few, people in the media and people that were there watching, camp and whatnot. And they're saying that what they saw on the field from Drake Jackson is not matching what they're hearing coming out from the players and the coaches. Like they're, I've heard somebody say that he didn't look, like that the weight that he put on from the time, pre-draft and all that, like that he put on about 30 pounds, and that the weight, is not looking like good weight, like he didn't put it on right, that he's looking sluggish and slow, that, and then Bosa, when he talked about, like that he can do things that, even Bosa couldn't do like his first year, and like talked about his bend and stuff, like, like the guys that I heard, like they're saying like they're not seeing any of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Rohan, before you answer too, and I think I don't know if you're talking about this too, Miriah, because what I saw was they were talking about the reps from this offensive tackle that they brought in as a camp body, who wasn't drafted, wasn't an undrafted free agent bias that we signed, like who's probably not going to make the team, but I heard he was dominating Drake Jackson. You know what I mean? So that's like, to me, I think that's where the concern comes in. And like I say, he's 20 years old. He's young, and maybe it could be a situation where like the weight he put on was maybe too much at one time. Like it happened so fast that maybe he's just a little sluggy and needs to get adjusted to it. So go ahead, Rohan.
When we talk about the weight, I'm actually not concerned about the weight. Drake Jackson had a goal to get to 275, which he was building through the offseason from the combine onto the draft, because he was around 240, I believe, or 245 at the end of last season when he was misused as a linebacker instead of a defensive end. He wanted to get to that 270, 275 range. And I mean, I actually had the chance to see Drake Jackson in person maybe 3 weeks ago. He looked pretty like, despite him being pretty big, he looked pretty slender in my opinion. I think that speed is there. It probably in the early part of the training camp, it's just him getting back on the field, slow start, and probably him getting used to his new weight once again. Like, because this is the weight that he had when he had his best season in college, in his freshman year when he was actually an edge rusher at USC. So I'm not necessarily worried about the weight itself. Now, as for the slow start, I think the bend, I wonder what if there's a concern about that. That's something that'll be monitored definitely at training camp, because on tape at least that's something that really flourished, because that's what part of that God-given talent, that bend ability is there. And so if that's there at training camp, then I'm not worried about it. If it's not always there, if it's not consistent, then I think it's up to Chris Kocurek to find a way to make that consistent. But at least with the traits and the athlete that is there, I think that's something to be excited about. But now it's just, as a matter of fact, just like putting it all together and getting on the field and finding different ways and adding different moves to your arsenal. I think that's something, because it is in a way a transition period more so for Drake Jackson than other rookies, just because he's transitioning once again to his natural position. He wasn't an edge rusher throughout the entire time at USC, and now he's going to be predominantly used as an edge rusher, maybe even a 3-down edge rusher, where now you have to go against the run. So I think that's a part also where the weight comes in, because I think Jackson doesn't necessarily want to just be a pass rusher. He doesn't want to be a pass rushing specialist. I think he also wants to be a 3-down back, based on what I've heard from people within his camp. So it's an interesting part there. So I think it's him, at least in the early part, right? I'm thinking you're talking about the rookie minicamp back in, I think it was late May 19th, somewhere around there. And so I think that he's growing into his body right now, and I think he's getting back into shape probably, and really starting to act more as an edge rusher.
Yeah. That's some good points. Yeah, I was thinking about that too, because we always talk about on the show how, like, we've drafted guys in the past, and then, like, they start making them fluctuate with their weight, and it just hinders them. We had like the Tank Carradines, stuff like that. That was like, he played his best season at Florida State at 6'4", 270. Then he gets to the Niners, like, oh, we need you to be a 3-4 in. And then it's like, you make him go from 270 to almost 300 pounds. And then, and then, okay. And then you get a new regime. Now I need you to get more down. Like, you can't be doing that to these people. Like, it's hard it's already hard in the NFL as it is. You need to find one position, perfect it somewhat so you can be good at it, have your proper technique down, stuff like that. So you make good points, because I think like you mentioned too, and like you and I mentioned, it could be one of those things where, like you said, he was 245, now he's at 275. Put it on 30 pounds in 3 months or 2.5 months is pretty fast. You know what I mean? So it's like, so maybe he's just getting adjusted to, like, getting back into that weight and knowing his movements and stuff like that. I mean, hearing that he was getting manhandled by some tackle that wasn't going to probably even make the team was kind of concerning. But at the same time, then you heard the rumors or the reports that saying that Spencer Burford was dominating Eric Armstead inside. So, it's just one of those things where it's like you take that with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, I think too, huh?
No, you go ahead and then I'll finish up.
Yeah. So I think us with the worrying of, oh, this is going to happen, this might happen. I truly believe that Drake Jackson. Me and Miriah always say this: if there's one coach that I'm not worried about, is Chris Kasarik. You know what I mean? So I think Chris Kasarik, he knows what he's going to get. He knows what Drake Jackson, what he has to be at weight wise and stuff like that to be truly dominant in this league. So.
Right, exactly. I think that I agree with what you're saying, but also it's a part that Drake Jackson right now in the defensive line, Kyle Shanahan did mention during State of the Franchise that the defensive line really is not it's not to what you expect because there's no pads. You can't really expect physicality. And so in one-on-one drills, it might be a lot different than obviously when 49ers are playing real football, because Drake Jackson's going to be put in the best situation possible because he's going to demand the least attention possible on that defensive line. He's the rookie. They've got Arik Armstead, who sometimes commands double teams. Nick Bosa, who commands double teams a ton. And, whoever is going to be on that defensive line is going to just help Drake Jackson get opportunities. And so I think that that's also a change, especially when pads come on. I think really right now we can't make a definitive conclusion on anybody on the defensive line until we see how they operate with pads, how they operate with utilizing their full strength rather than being limited because of the situation currently.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yep, I agree as well. All right, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Rohan, why don't you let the people know where to find you again? And I thank you so much for giving us your time, for coming on. We'll definitely have to do it again.
Oh, yeah. Thank you guys so much, obviously, for bringing me on. You guys can find me on Twitter at Rohan Chakravarthi. You can find me on my YouTube channel, the 49ers Red Zone podcast, where we have weekly episodes and a ton of interesting guests as well. And then make sure to check out my written content at 49ers Web Zone. Weekly content is out there, just giving you guys the up-to-date news on the 49ers, as well as my opinion on what's happening currently in the news. But once again, thank you guys so much for bringing me on. Make sure to subscribe to this channel right here. Obviously, always providing great shows for you guys. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the 49er Faithful League podcast and these amazing hosts as well.
I appreciate that, bro.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, fam, for hanging out with us. We'll see you guys in a couple days. We'll have a show scheduled for Tuesday. We'll see you then.